Here's something that's probably happening in your organization right now, and nobody's talking about it. Your most expensive employees, your software engineers pulling in six figures, your financial analysts making critical investment decisions, your market strategists shaping company direction, they've already adopted a new coworker. And this coworker isn't sitting in the cubicle next to them. It's an AI agent that's actively rewriting documents, manipulating spreadsheets, and executing multi-step workflows while your IT department has no idea it's even happening. We're not talking about ChatGPT anymore. We're not talking about asking a chatbot for advice or getting help with a brainstorming session. We're talking about autonomous systems that can take a goal, break it down into steps, navigate between multiple applications, and execute tasks without constant supervision. And the data that just came out shows this isn't some distant future scenario. It's happening right now, at massive scale, and it's creating both extraordinary opportunities and serious risks that most organizations are completely unprepared for. By the end of this deep dive, you'll understand exactly who's using these tools, what they're really doing with them, why this represents a fundamental shift in how knowledge work gets done, and most importantly, what you need to do about it whether you're a business leader, an IT professional, or someone trying to stay relevant in this rapidly changing landscape. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're not thinking about AI agents, you're already behind. Let me give you some context that changes everything. For the past year, the entire tech industry has been operating on assumptions and speculation about AI agents. Everyone agreed they were coming. Everyone agreed they'd be important. But nobody actually knew how they were being used in the real world. We had marketing narratives, we had vendor promises, we had limited surveys from consulting firms, but we didn't have hard data on actual behavior at scale. That just changed. Perplexity, the AI company behind one of the major AI assistant platforms, just released an analysis of hundreds of millions of real user interactions with their Comet browser and assistant. This isn't a survey where people tell you what they think they do. This is observational data showing what people actually do when they think nobody's watching. And what it reveals is that the agentic AI revolution isn't coming, it's already here, and it looks completely different from what most people expected. First, let's define what we're actually talking about, because terminology matters here. An AI agent isn't just a chatbot that answers questions. The researchers in this study define agents as systems that cycle automatically between three iterative phases: thinking, acting, and observing. They can set goals, plan steps, execute actions across multiple applications, evaluate results, and adjust their approach without waiting for human input at every turn. They're not just reasoning engines anymore. They have hands. They can manipulate your environment. Now here's where it gets interesting for business planning. The adoption pattern isn't what most people predicted. There's this popular narrative that AI would democratize knowledge work, that it would level the playing field, that it would be adopted uniformly across all sectors and demographics. The data completely contradicts this. What we're seeing instead is hyper-concentrated adoption among exactly the people you'd least want operating outside your IT governance framework. Users in nations with higher GDP per capita and greater educational attainment are far more likely to engage with agentic tools. But more importantly, for any organization trying to plan around this technology, the occupational breakdown is stunning. The digital technology cluster, your software engineers, developers, and tech professionals, represents 28% of all adopters and 30% of all queries. That's the single largest group. Following close behind are academia, finance, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Think about what this means. Over 70% of the people using AI agents are concentrated in 5 sectors: technology, research, finance, marketing, and business creation. These aren't administrative assistants automating email responses. These aren't entry-level workers handling routine tasks. These are your most expensive assets. These are the people making 6-figure salaries and above. These are the strategic thinkers, the decision makers, the people with access to your most sensitive data and your most critical systems. And here's the part that should really get your attention. Power users, the people who got early access to these tools, make 9 times as many agentic queries as average users. 9 times. This isn't casual experimentation. This isn't people playing around with a new toy. Once these tools get integrated into someone's workflow, they become indispensable. Usage doesn't plateau, it accelerates. The technology isn't supplementing their work. It's becoming foundational to how they operate. Let's talk about the use cases, because this is where the real story emerges. There's been this persistent narrative in the media that AI agents would primarily function as digital butlers, handling rote administrative tasks, scheduling meetings, sorting emails, that kind of thing. The data obliterates this assumption. 57% of all agent activity focuses on cognitive work. More than half of what people are using these tools for involves thinking, analysis, and complex decision support. The researchers developed what they call a hierarchical agentic taxonomy to classify user intent across all these interactions. The dominant use case, accounting for 36% of all agentic queries, is productivity and workflow. The second largest category, at 21%, is learning and research. These aren't people asking for weather updates or setting timers. These are people delegating substantial intellectual tasks. Let me give you some concrete examples from the study that illustrate what this looks like in practice. A procurement professional used the assistant to scan through multiple customer case studies, identify relevant use cases, and synthesize the information before engaging with a vendor. Think about that for a second. This person didn't just ask the AI for advice. They tasked it with navigating to actual documents, reading through them, extracting patterns, and preparing a summary. The agent was operating autonomously across multiple information sources. Or consider the finance worker who delegated the filtering of stock options and the analysis of investment information. This isn't someone asking for the definition of a financial term. This is someone offloading the entire initial phase of investment research, gathering data, applying filters, performing preliminary analysis, and only stepping in for the final judgment call. The agent handles information gathering and initial synthesis. The human handles evaluation and decision-making. Here's another one that should make IT security teams nervous. Users are tasking agents with debugging code, summarizing financial reports, editing documents in Google Docs, and managing professional networking activities on LinkedIn. These aren't read-only operations. These are write operations. These agents are actively manipulating data inside core enterprise applications, often involving proprietary information, and they're doing it through personal accounts that may not be subject to corporate governance policies. Now I want to talk about something the researchers call the stickiness of AI agents, because this has profound implications for how these tools will spread through organizations. The data shows a consistent behavioral pattern in how people adopt and integrate these tools into their workflows, and it follows a predictable evolution. New users typically start by testing the waters with low-stakes queries. They ask for movie recommendations, general trivia, simple information retrieval. They're experimenting, trying to understand what the tool can do. But then something shifts. Over time, query patterns migrate toward cognitively oriented domains like productivity, learning, and career development. The casual experimentation gives way to serious task delegation. And here's the critical insight. Once someone uses an agent to debug their code or synthesize a financial report, they rarely revert to lower-value tasks. The productivity and workflow categories demonstrate the highest retention rates. Users aren't bouncing around randomly between use cases. They're discovering that these tools can handle substantial cognitive work, and once that realization hits, the behavior becomes entrenched. The researchers also found strong within-topic persistence in the short term. If someone engages an agent for a productivity task, their subsequent queries are highly likely to remain in that domain. They're not using the agent for everything. They're identifying specific workflows where the agent provides value, and then they're going deeper into those workflows. They're building what amounts to a collaborative relationship with the tool, where they're learning how to delegate effectively and the agent is being fine-tuned through repeated interactions. This has massive implications for how organizations should think about pilot programs and rollout strategies. You can't just give people access to an agent and expect them to immediately use it for high-value tasks. There's a learning curve, there's a discovery process, but once users cross a threshold and realize the agent can handle complex, multi-step workflows, adoption accelerates dramatically. And if that adoption is happening through shadow IT channels, you've got a governance problem that's growing exponentially without visibility. Let's talk about the Where? Of agentic AI, because the environment matters just as much as the activity. The Perplexity study tracked the specific websites and platforms where these agents operate, and the concentration patterns reveal both opportunities and risks that organizations need to understand. Google Docs emerges as a primary environment for document and spreadsheet editing. This makes sense, it's ubiquitous in modern organizations. LinkedIn dominates professional networking tasks. For learning and research activities, the usage splits between course platforms like Coursera and research repositories. For software development, GitHub is the obvious hub. For communication, corporate email systems are in play. Now here's what makes this particularly significant. The top 5 environments account for 96% of queries in certain categories like professional networking. This high concentration means that if you're an enterprise trying to harness the efficiency gains from agentic AI while maintaining governance, you have a relatively small number of high-leverage integration points. You don't need to secure every possible platform. You need to focus on the handful of platforms where the vast majority of agentic activity is concentrated. But here's the flip side for security and compliance teams. AI agents aren't just reading data in these environments. They're actively manipulating it. When an employee tasks an agent to summarize these customer case studies in Google Docs, that agent is accessing potentially proprietary information, processing it through external AI systems, and creating derivative content. When an agent is managing LinkedIn outreach, it's operating under someone's professional identity, potentially making commitments or representations that have legal implications. The study explicitly defines agentic queries as those involving browser control or actions on external applications via APIs. This isn't a chatbot sitting in a sandbox offering suggestions. This is a system with the ability to click buttons, fill out forms, send messages, modify documents, and execute code. The perimeter for data loss prevention expands dramatically when you have autonomous agents operating in what the researchers call open-world web environments. Let me connect some dots here that should be alarming to any CISO or IT governance leader. What we're seeing is the emergence of a shadow IT problem that's fundamentally different from previous generations of unauthorized technology adoption. When employees started using Dropbox or Slack before their companies officially sanctioned these tools, IT could eventually discover the usage, assess the risk, and bring it into the managed environment. The tools were visible. The data flows were traceable. AI agents operate differently. They're extensions of individual productivity, often running through personal accounts or browser-based interfaces that don't require installation or leave obvious traces. An employee using an AI agent through their personal browser to manipulate documents in their corporate Google Workspace account isn't triggering traditional security monitoring. The agent's API calls might look identical to normal user activity. The data exfiltration, if it's happening, is occurring as part of what appears to be legitimate work. And remember the adoption statistics we talked about earlier. The people using these tools are your most technically sophisticated employees. They're not randomly stumbling into this technology. They're actively seeking it out because it makes them more productive, and they understand how to use it effectively. These are the same people who know how to work around security controls when they perceive those controls as friction rather than protection. The market projections underscore the urgency here. The agentic AI market is expected to grow from $8 billion in 2025 to $199 billion by 2034. That's not incremental growth. That's explosive expansion. And it's being driven by demonstrated value. People are paying for these tools because they work. They're seeing productivity gains that justify the investment. Which means the pressure to adopt will only increase, whether organizations officially endorse it or not. Now let's talk about what this means for the future of work, because I think there's a lot of confusion about whether AI agents are going to replace human workers or augment them. The data from this study provides some clarity, and the answer is more nuanced than the binary replacement versus augmentation debate suggests. The researchers note that while agents have significant autonomy, users often break tasks into smaller pieces and delegate subtasks rather than entire workflows. What's emerging is a collaborative model where humans remain in the loop for judgment, evaluation, and course correction, while agents handle the execution of well-defined steps. It's not full automation. It's task decomposition with intelligent delegation. Think about what this means for skill development and workforce planning. The valuable employees in this new paradigm aren't the ones who can execute tasks. AI agents are increasingly capable of execution. The valuable employees are the ones who can effectively manage AI agents, who understand how to break complex problems into delegatable chunks, how to evaluate agent output for quality and accuracy, how to iteratively refine prompts and workflows, and how to maintain strategic oversight while delegating tactical execution. This is a completely different skill set from what we've traditionally valued in knowledge work. It's less about individual technical expertise and more about orchestration, judgment, and quality control. An engineer who can write code is valuable. An engineer who can effectively direct an AI agent to write code while focusing their own attention on architecture, design decisions, and integration challenges is exponentially more valuable. But here's the challenge: most organizations aren't training their workforce for this reality. They're still hiring and promoting based on individual execution capability. They're not thinking about how to upskill employees in agent management. They're not creating frameworks for effective human-AI collaboration. And in the meantime, their most forward-thinking employees are figuring this out on their own, through trial and error, using tools that may not be sanctioned or secured. Given everything we've discussed, let me lay out 3 immediate actions that operational leaders need to consider. These aren't long-term strategic initiatives. These are things you should be thinking about right now, because the adoption is already happening whether you're ready for it or not. First, audit the productivity and workflow friction points within your high-value teams. The data is clear that this is where agents are naturally finding their foothold. Your software engineers are using agents to debug code and generate documentation. Your financial analysts are using agents to gather data and perform preliminary analysis. Your market strategists are using agents to synthesize research and draft reports. These workflows are being optimized right now, but they're being optimized through shadow IT. What you need to do is identify where the friction exists, understand how agents are being used to address it, and then formalize those workflows in a way that captures the efficiency gains while implementing appropriate governance. This doesn't mean blocking the technology. That ship has sailed. Blocking it will just drive it further underground. Instead, you need to provide sanctioned pathways that are actually better than the shadow IT alternatives, more capable, more integrated, and yes, more secure. Second, prepare for the augmentation reality. This means fundamentally rethinking how you structure work, evaluate performance, and develop talent. If agents are going to handle increasing amounts of execution work, you need employees who excel at strategic thinking, problem decomposition, and quality evaluation. You need to be actively training your workforce in how to effectively collaborate with AI systems. This isn't a nice to have. This is a core competency for the modern knowledge worker. Create frameworks that help employees understand when to delegate to an agent and when to handle tasks directly. Develop quality control processes that account for agent-generated work. Build feedback loops that allow workers to improve their agent management skills over time. And critically, start measuring productivity not just by individual output but by the effectiveness of human-agent collaboration. The employees who figure this out first will have an enormous advantage over those who resist or ignore it. Third, address the infrastructure and security layer with urgency. With agents operating in open-world web environments and interacting with sites like GitHub, Google Docs, LinkedIn, and corporate email, your traditional security perimeter is obsolete. You need policies that distinguish between a chatbot offering advice and an agent executing code or sending messages. You need monitoring that can detect when agents are accessing sensitive data. You need data loss prevention that understands the difference between a human copying information and an agent exfiltrating it. This probably means investing in new categories of security tools specifically designed for the agent era. It definitely means updating your acceptable use policies to explicitly address AI agents. And it requires cross-functional collaboration between IT, security, legal, and business units to ensure that governance doesn't kill productivity but also doesn't create unacceptable risk. Let me zoom out for a moment and talk about why this matters beyond just operational efficiency and security risk. The organizations that figure out how to harness agentic AI effectively are going to have an enormous competitive advantage over those that don't. And I'm not talking about incremental improvements. I'm talking about order of magnitude differences in productivity, speed, and scalability. Imagine two competing financial services firms. Firm A is still operating with traditional workflows where analysts manually gather data, create spreadsheets, build models, and prepare reports. Firm B has formalized the use of AI agents to handle the data gathering, preliminary analysis, and report generation, freeing their analysts to focus entirely on insight generation, strategy formulation, and client relationships. Firm B can analyze more opportunities, respond faster to market changes, and provide more comprehensive advice to clients, all with the same headcount as Firm A. Over time, this isn't a competitive advantage. It's a competitive chasm. Or consider two software companies. Company A has developers writing code the traditional way, spending significant time on documentation, debugging, testing, and routine implementation work. Company B has developers who effectively orchestrate AI agents to handle the routine implementation while they focus on architecture, user experience, and innovation. Company B can ship features faster, maintain higher quality through automated testing, and redirect more engineering resources to strategic initiatives. They're not just moving faster. They're playing a different game entirely. The data from Perplexity shows that the early adopters understand this. The power users who are making 9 times as many agentic queries as average users aren't doing it for fun. They're doing it because they've discovered leverage. They've found a way to be more productive, more effective, and more valuable to their organizations. And they're building that advantage every single day while others are still debating whether this technology is ready. Here's what keeps me up at night about this data. The risk isn't that AI agents will fail to deliver value. The data proves they're already delivering value. The risk is that organizations will be too slow to adapt, too cautious to embrace the change, and too focused on the risks to seize the opportunity. And while they're forming committees and running pilot programs and waiting for the perfect governance framework, their employees and competitors are racing ahead. Shadow IT adoption is accelerating. The most capable employees are already using these tools. The productivity gains are real and measurable. And every day that passes without a formal organizational response is a day where the gap between official policy and actual practice grows wider. You're not preventing the adoption by being cautious. You're just losing visibility and control over it. There's also a talent risk here that nobody's talking about. The employees who become proficient at working with AI agents are going to be in extremely high demand. They're going to command premium salaries. And if your organization isn't supporting their use of these tools, providing them with sanctioned, high-quality alternatives, and recognizing their enhanced productivity, they're going to leave for companies that do. You'll end up losing your most forward-thinking, technically capable employees to organizations that embraced this technology earlier. Let me bring this all together. The data from Perplexity gives us the first clear picture of how AI agents are actually being used at scale, and it reveals a transformation that's already well underway. Your most expensive employees are delegating complex cognitive work to autonomous systems. They're seeing dramatic productivity gains. And they're doing it whether or not your organization has officially sanctioned it. You have a choice to make, and the window for making it is shrinking rapidly. You can view this as a threat, shadow IT running rampant, security risks proliferating, governance collapsing. Or you can view it as an opportunity, a chance to formalize and accelerate productivity gains that your workforce is already discovering, to build competitive advantage through effective human-AI collaboration, and to position your organization at the forefront of how knowledge work gets done in the 21st century. The organizations that will thrive in this new era are the ones that can move quickly to embrace agentic AI while implementing thoughtful governance. They'll audit their workflows to understand where agents provide value. They'll train their workforce to excel at human-AI collaboration. They'll build security and compliance frameworks that protect sensitive data without killing productivity. And they'll do all of this with urgency, because every day of delay is a day where their competitors are pulling ahead. The agentic AI revolution isn't coming. It's here. The question isn't whether your organization will be affected. The question is whether you'll lead the transformation or be swept along by it. Because make no mistake, your employees have already decided. They're using these tools, they're seeing the benefits, and they're not going back. The only question is whether you'll harness that momentum or lose control of it. The data is clear. The path forward is challenging but navigable. And the time to act is now. Not next quarter. Not after the next planning cycle. Now. Because in the time it took you to watch this video, thousands of knowledge workers around the world made their workflows more efficient through AI agents. And tomorrow, they'll do it again. The question is, will your organization be leading that charge, or watching from behind?